Regular fix of the best guests from the world of data and analytics. This is the Data Mix with Brian Booden and George Beaton.
Big George. Hello, Big George.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
Pretty well, pretty well. Like, I feel like technically in control today, which is like sometimes a difference for us, a difference of opinion, but like camera's situation's feeling good, the lighting is working to my favor. So I'm having a good start, mate. How about you?
Good. I'm kind of running around all over the place. We had some pretty bad storms earlier late last week, and there's still a bit of clear up going on around
Yeah.
that. So I'm at my brother's house at the moment.
Yeah.
We had a power cut at the end of last week, which we've resolved, but I'm still sort of messing around here. So not quite feeling grounded, not as grounded as you anyway.
Well, yeah, I hear you on the AO front, right? If the data fix was a weather event, then I'm sure that's what we'd be talking about, but it's not. So yeah, we're in recovery mode on the weather side of things, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So
Yeah.
absolute pleasure to have you here as always. And again, no secrets here with our guest who we'll have on very shortly. But to the order of the day, first of all, right? Let's get our bits and bobs out the way, right? So like we're really lucky to have you as an audience, guys. We are not ashamed to say that. We love the fact that you download the pod, you join us on YouTube. We're working really hard on the YouTube channel just now to sort of make that more accessible for you, in terms of pulling all that together. So please, if you do have a second, please just join us and sub us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. We really do appreciate it. And it helps you keep up to date with all the latest stuff that's going on. George, any comments?
I think the actions are speaking for themselves. We've had our subscriptions are going fantastically ever since you started this, Brian. We're I think we're way over 600. In fact, pushing 700 now, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think we just landed another like 60 or 70 subs in the last few days as well. So I think we're actually even higher than that now, which is totally awesome. Let's keep it going, folks. We appreciate your support. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
and it means we can get better and better guests. Not that
Better and
I
better
should rephrase
guests.
that, but
It is incredibly important. So thank you very much for everyone as well. Um, so thank you very much. So into our regular segment of the data fix. So George, how are you feeling about this? So I'll line you up and get you in there.
yes, please, because we
All
have
right,
got
let's do
a
it. Let's
very
do
hot
it.
one today.
All right, okay, let's get you in. So here we go. So today's episode of the Data Fix is brought to you by your friendly jingle in the background. So George, what have we got going on in the
Thank
world
you.
of tech today? I have a sneaking suspicion I might know what this is, but I'm going to let you talk about
I
it.
think you do. It's the one that's been setting the stock markets uh, alight at the moment. I think I heard somebody call it America's Sputnik moment when the Americans thought that the Russians had won the space race. It is, of course, DeepSeek. So this is a new AI model by a Chinese AI startup that was only founded 2 years ago. They have released a model, an AI model, that is reportedly outperforming OpenAI's O1 in all sorts of maths and reasoning criteria. It's blown onto the scene and really taken the world by surprise. I think we've seen stock prices, tech stocks tumble. I have some Nvidia shares. I was watching them crashing yesterday. I wouldn't say crashing, but they dropped 12.5%. I'm still up slightly, but it really is sending the shockwaves through the stock market. And I think it's raising questions. I think that's the key thing. It's raising questions around why does it take at least 100 million for OpenAI, Anthropic, etc., to train a model, when DeepSeek reportedly trained their model for under 6 million. So 6% or less of what these other big AI companies are.
And this is trained with data, so apparently, supposedly, allegedly, up to like Q1 2024, right? So it's not
Yes.
right up to date, but it's getting there. So
Yeah. I haven't tested it myself. A couple of my friends have tested it, and they're saying, "Damn, this is real. This is good."
Mhm.
So it's one to watch, and it'll be really interesting to see how the market goes. I did have a conversation with some of my buddies last night about what their feelings are. It could be good for the industry if you think that this could mean that you can have uh, um, your own personal AI running on an NVIDIA Jetson, for example, or on a modern iPhone in your pocket. This is really what this technology is saying. So maybe it'll make it far more ubiquitous. Everybody will have one, and in their pocket, they'll be able to keep their data to themselves. There won't be this latency of sending information over the net. So who knows? But it's very interesting.
It's kind of fascinating, right? Because it puts Sam Altman and co in quite a situation, doesn't it? After they've not only a couple of months ago they launched their $200 a month sub or whatever it was for the very latest models of ChatGPT, and now out of nowhere the little upstart has turned up, and all of a sudden everyone can have an LLM in their pocket. So it's quite a market shaker at this point in time,
Does.
specifically with the political elements of it as well. We've already seen a little bit of the blowback with that. Anyone who's turned on a TV over the last few days will have seen that. So it's interesting times. It really is.
And this announcement of 500 billion for Stargate, which is America's sort of belts and roads program to build AI data centers across the country. Now there's going to be a question mark. Do you need 500 billion to do this?
Well, exactly, and I think you can argue whether this was politically motivated in terms of the time of its release, depending on everything that's happening with current events in the world. But we're not a politics show, and we wouldn't surmise on that. But it does seem quite a coincidence, shall we say, that it's all happening at this particular time. So.
Indeed.
But I think if to turn a positive spin on it, I think, and we'll chat to our guest very, very soon. But he has big views on democratization of AI for everyone that can possibly get it. So this could be a bit of a game changer. I don't want to sound like a ChatGPT description, right, by using words like game changer, but I think honestly it is a bit of a watermark, and time will tell how quickly this pushes forward. But from what we've learned about AI over the last 18 to 24 months, it won't take long for this to accelerate. So, all right, fabulous. Anything else on your plate, mate? Or
well, there's all sorts of things we could talk about, but I think just about everything in tech nowadays has got a political angle to it. So, probably let's just underscore it. We've talked about DeepSeek. We mentioned Stargate. I think AI is still definitely number one up there in the technology news. Everything seems to have an AI angle at the moment. You just can't get away from it.
Well, that's it. And again, we are relatively, it's important to say we're still relatively in the dark. We're still really at press release stage. We don't really know what this thing is, where it's come from, how it works, how it's going to impact everyday life. So it'll be fascinating to see that. And I can already see some comments in the chat. So we might just have a quick chat about that. But thank you very much, mate. That was a storming data fix this week. It's on everyone's minds, and it needed to be talked about. So thank you very much for that.
My pleasure.
Right. Let's pop out of this segment then and get back into the show for real. Thank you very much, mate. That was awesome. So the data fix is here every 2 weeks to keep you up to date with tech in the current day. Lovely. So if that was like the entree, then I guess it's time to move on to the main course, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about our guest today, mate, before we bring him on?
Yes, I've met Kurtis on a call we had. Was it before Christmas? But honestly, the energy, Kurtis's story, where he's got to in his career, all inspiring, all riveting. Actually, I think we are in for a fantastic segment here, and I can't wait to get him on.
Well, let's do that right now. Let's get Kurt on. Hey, Kurt, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you all. Am I coming through okay?
Oh, yeah, you're all good. Perfect.
Perfect.
Superb to see you, mate. Thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us today.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to be here. Happy to talk about data anytime. Big fan.
Awesome. Well, look, I think before we get into introductions and this thing, I think it's fair that we call out some of these comments in the chat and give you a chance to say what you think about these recent developments as well, Kurt. But welcome, Angel. Thank you for joining in. Are we positive that this thing does not run on Occidental? Now, I don't know if that's a terminology thing for me. I'm not sure what Occidental hardware is, but I don't know is the answer. I don't know if either of you guys have a viewpoint on that, but I'm assuming we're talking about the Chinese AI here. But I guess not. So we'll swiftly move on. Angel, if you want to ask another question, please do. And our good friend Luke, who's a previous friend of the show, has been on for an episode before. Legally acquired data in line with global data protection legislation. Oh my goodness, yes, this is a massive can of worms that we cannot possibly cover today. But look,
I've seen the
I'm
rumors.
sure we can have you back to discuss in more detail.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of grey areas here, Kurt, right? And you've had quite a long experience of AI, and that, like, new tools just coming out of the woodwork and becoming globally dominant is not a good sign for GDPR or any other data regulation that exists out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have to imagine that any generalized model is, pulling lots of information from the internet. They do what they can, to control where they're scraping from. But, a lot of times, like you said, it's a very big gray area. Who knows where they're getting these data sets? It's also a lot of times companies will use third-party data sets instead of doing a lot of the bulk work on their own. And so, you have to kind of follow the trail there. So definitely gets into a gray area. I'd be very curious to see if they open source like the data that has been trained on, or at least give some sort of indication of where they're pulling it from. I think, that's really for me, like the next step in like the true open sourceness of AI. We see this with Hugging Face, right? Like you can upload your data sets there. And so it's pretty transparent, like what you've trained your models on. I would love to see more transparency around that for sure. I think that would help move like AI trust a very long way, especially for end users.
Trust is a big word there, right? And I'm sure we'll get into that as we talk more. But I just wanted to say welcome again, Kurt. And obviously, it was awesome to meet you out in San Jose. It feels like a long time ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. It just feels that way. So
yeah,
Kurt and I were lucky enough to meet out at Tech Field Day, and it was our first experience, both of us, our first experience of that. How did you find that whole thing, mate? It's a bit of a whirlwind for me, so I'd be interested to hear what you thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a bit of a whirlwind, but I really enjoy that structure. To me, it feels much like, so I work in developer relations. I would put this akin to like an accelerator program, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you're closing the feedback loop between companies and people who can provide really useful insight into like, what they're doing. So I think, when you look at that, and then it's both ways. One, it helps the companies understand maybe where they can make adjustments or following the right track, right? Like green lit, we're doing the right thing here. And on the flip side, it gives the experts an opportunity to expand the breadth of, information that they have available to them to help make even more and more informed decisions. Context is everything. So that's something I live with in developer relations. And I think anytime you can shorten a feedback loop, everyone's going to benefit. But yeah, overall, very great experience.
Cool. Well, I'll just chip in with one more, and then I'll let George get unleashed on the other side there. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing as well, because obviously we met in San Jose, but tell us a bit about yourself, Kurt, to start with.
Yeah, so hey everyone, Kurtis Kemple, currently Senior Director of Developer Relations at Salesforce, but I focus on Slack as the platform. So I've been there for a couple of years now. I was first focused on growth and engagement for platform, and then took over DevRel pretty recently, about 6-7 months ago. So it's been a very fun and interesting challenge. I've enjoyed it quite a lot. Before that, I was doing consulting in developer relations, helping startups, scale-ups, and enterprise businesses understand DevRel, what they need from it, given their different characteristics and goals, and there's like sometimes how to like build those teams and help them start on those journeys. And so prior to that, I've been in engineering, software development for over a decade. That culminated. I was tech lead of the UI team for Major League Soccer. So anything fan facing, we like rebuilt the mobile app, Greenfield, migrated to GraphQL for a lot of their APIs, rebuilt all the stats processing pipeline and stuff. It was real fun. I also built their Fire TV app, their Facebook chatbot. My first intro to AI, like 8 years ago, back before we really hit the mark on natural language processing. So I was really trying to do a lot there to improve the experience for our chatbot. So it was really cool. But yeah, that's kind of, I've always enjoyed helping folks be successful, and that kind of led me into education and training, which is, what led me to developer relations. And then I think what, really grounds this and this show in particular is I take a very data informed approach, especially when you're working in an enterprise company. We cannot undervalue the importance of having quantitative data. You need that qualitative as well, but you really need to understand the quantitative data that is available to you and what people care about in your business so that you can show impact and continue to grow and succeed in developer relations.
Yeah, fantastic. So, are you remote based, or are you actually in the Salesforce office?
I am remote based, so I'm on the East Coast, excuse me, roughly the Virginia Beach area, but I'm in San Francisco all the time. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. We certainly in the industry that I'm in, we hear about Salesforce all the time. It's a huge player in enterprise software.
Yes,
I
it
don't
is.
want to labor the AI point too much, but from an enterprise point of view, it seems that Salesforce is right there at the cutting edge of how enterprises are using AI. And I think you've got quite a strong program and roadmap of AI, and some quite ambitious targets as well. Do you want to talk about them for a second?
I would love to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Salesforce with AgentForce is, like you said, extremely well positioned in the enterprise space. I mean, Salesforce is such an expansive platform, right? Like you can integrate anything into it. And because you can integrate anything into it, that means you can bring it into AgentForce. On top of that, there's been a lot of work put in within the Atlas reasoning engine and trust and privacy layer, right? Like to make sure that, all of your data is protected in and out. You can even connect like third-party LLMs and still like the data is protected on the way in and out. Like, what's going out exactly and what's coming in. And so it's just a really nice setup. But long story short, you can bring all of that, all of that into these actions for your agents. And so like you can, I just think like it's fundamentally about to change. We know that like smaller, more specialized models with guardrails and better instruction perform better. It's why we have like Claude projects and your own custom GPTs that you can upload your RAG data to and define how you want them to behave, right? Like, so we know that is that. And so I just think that, Salesforce and AgentForce are so well positioned. And then when you put Slack as that conversational interface in front of these agents, they can definitely be working externally with customers as well. But, when you have these internal facing agents, gap filling expertise, picking up all of that, low end toil and automation stuff off of your team's plate to free you up to focus on the work that matters, right? Like the stuff that drives impact. And we're just at the beginning of it. I'm already building agents that are doing pretty incredible things. And, I just think about how we're in the infancy stages of this, the MVP. Like in a few years, Atlas Reasoning Engine will be like unreal. It's already impressive, some of the things that it does. And so, yeah, long story short, I do think we are well positioned. I do think AgentForce will provide a lot of value to a lot of businesses, and it's already providing value to me and my team. Like we're building agents.
So, Kurt, I listened a couple of weeks ago. I listened to a podcast where Mark Benioff was being interviewed. So it was an hour-long podcast. He was talking about the AI strategy in Salesforce. Sorry to labor Salesforce. I know your focus is Slack.
Oh no, this is It's all. Trust me, one company. Yeah.
Awesome. But what came across really was Mark's sort of vision and enthusiasm. So I was kind of keen to know how much is do you kind of get that energy, that Benioff energy down through the rest of the business into the stuff that you're doing on a daily basis?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, it is absolutely a great question. And I'll tell you this, like AgentForce is fundamental to Salesforce. That energy is literally in every team. Like everybody is understanding, how we can contribute to the success of AgentForce. It's a very exciting time, an unprecedented product. It feels like when mobile first came out, or the expansion to cloud, like all these things like fundamentally changed the shape of the company, product offerings. And so I just think that AgentForce is, well, it's a force, and that energy is carried all throughout everything. We all see a lot of potential with it, and on the Slack side, it's like an excellent integration between those two platforms that just unlocks like a lot. And so we've been working at finding those real sweet spots of keeping Slack and tying into Salesforce real well. And AgentForce unlocks a lot. It really does. It's really nice.
So.
And Kurt, I know that we've already used words like AI and agentic and everything that we possibly could have used. We have already, right? But I know from you, from speaking to you personally, how much this means to you. And I don't just mean from a technological standpoint, right? And I want to just shift gears a little bit into how AI and data and all of those things that have been important to you, how much you feel should be important to other people as well. And not only important, but accessible, right? Because this is a bit, we spent a lot of time talking about this, and I was pretty amazed to hear your thoughts on it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're coming from?
Yeah. So much like what I just described with this world that we have in Salesforce, where you'll be able to, build these agents, right, that can handle anything from teaching you code instruction to taking action on different apps. Now, that's very powerful, right? But that's like trapped in the enterprise, right? But as we look at things like DeepSeek and your ability to have this on your phone, right? Like, wouldn't it be really nice if the end user, like the everyday person, could also have access to just an ecosystem of models or agents that can help them do anything from figure out how to start a restaurant because they're an amazing chef, but they don't have a business background, or maybe they're a civil engineer and they want to, take into account climate effects on what materials they're planning to use, and so they could, rely on these models and agents to help them navigate and figure out these, again, gap filling expertise or removing toil from people so that they can focus their energy on time on things that matter. So I think there's a ton of opportunity, but especially in the education space. With my personal background, so I'm formerly incarcerated, right? I was incarcerated in 2004, roughly, released in 2010. And that's actually where I got my introduction to programming. Now, I didn't really have access to anything. I had like a book, we had a computer with no internet, and I had a teacher who had like a rough understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Luckily, like, it just really fueled a fire in me, and I was persistent, and I stuck with it, and I continued to educate myself. And upon release, I continued to educate myself and follow that path. That path could have been greatly shortened for me, and I could have learned a lot if they'd given me a tablet with no internet, but did have an agent on it, agentic, that could review my code for me and offer suggestions, right? And like show me diffs and where I made my mistake, and like teach me further. And or, you know, now everyone in the room's questions can be answered at the same time to free up the teacher. But hey, we can keep human in the loop if we're unsure about the results here from what we're getting from this agent, and I still have a teacher there, right? Like something to reach out to. So I just think as these models get smaller and as these reasoning engines get better and we start making them more specialized, right? And powered by contextual data, you know, RAG, like all these things, you know, they matter, right? So they matter because they all can lead to the democratization of like information and AI to everyone. You know, and you could look at humanitarian use cases that this could benefit, you know, aside from educational use cases that this could benefit. And so, you know, as someone who like, you know, benefited from discovering front-end development, which only requires a computer to have access to, which is still a lot for some people. I do understand that as well. But, you know, it's a lower barrier to entry than a lot of other forms of like software development or other fields. And so, you know, I think if we could continue to reduce that barrier to entry or provide more and more resources to people who might lack access to them, you'd be amazed at like what that might do globally. Like, yeah, the impact that could have. And so all that to say is, I think as models get smaller and more specialized, and as we push the scale more towards user-friendly, and like Hugging Face is a great example, again, because they've pushed the scale to developers. It's an amazing DX now to work with models, train them, right? Deploy them, share them. It's going to push further to the end user. And so eventually we'll see something like a marketplace or marketplaces where people are deploying models and agents, and there's like some sort of like revenue sharing system with the people who are putting them up there, and it gives access to you through your phone or computer or whatever, access to all of these things. And I think like I love the cost aspect of DeepSeek, because like, yeah, you know, traditionally, you know, you're trapped in the $100 million club, right? Like if you don't have $100 million, you can't train like a really significant model. And so, you know, to see the price drop to 6 billion, right? Like if, you know, once that's like actually, consistent, right? Like that will continue to happen, right? Like we'll have more and more innovations in how we train, how we build models, and, you know, the price will continue to drop. And so I think all things lead to democratization, but like, you know, I think we could get there quicker if more people were thinking about it, you know? And so from my perspective, it's just, you know, I want to see AI democratized because I understand the intrinsic like value and the true like, I don't want to sound like AI, but the transformative nature that like this AI and smaller and better tech actually unlocks for people. You know, like AI is a very big umbrella, and a lot of it, you know, probably not as useful, honestly, but like there's a lot of parts of AI that are gonna change things pretty fundamentally. And, you know, I think it's just, again, everything's on a scale, right? Nothing is binary. And so I'm very interested to see how it shakes out, but I just hope it gets here faster than later, sooner than later.
Yeah, look, and I'm smiling in the most warm-hearted way that I can, Kurt, because I know like how much of a personal difference it's made to you, and how much of a personal mission this is for you as well, given your background. That I think it's amazing that you're so open to just talking about it and just putting it right out there. There's no awkwardness there, and I think that's incredible. But I could focus on so many of the things that you said, but I'm going to just take one, because I was going to actually say it as well, was the barrier for entry, right? I think that is the key part of all of this. And you can say that the like Chinese AI might help accelerate this in a massive way when people realize that cost at scale is not as much of a factor. But ultimately, we need to always look at ways that we can lower the barrier for entry so that you know,
Absolutely.
people can use like a £40 phone to get the things that they need rather than having to have a high-end Apple 16 iPhone or whatever it is, plus a data subscription, plus a chat GPT subscription or whatever your LLM provider is. That's a lot of cost for people that just can't necessarily afford that. So when we talk about democratization, that's highly tied in with affordability and economics as well. And that's why I think these recent announcements are very, very exciting. And as George mentioned in the data fix as well, and I'll just finish with this one, in terms of like Stargate and the value that's been apportioned to that project, how does all of that now get, because it must be reevaluated now that given these revelations, you can't just come out and say, 500 billion, was it, George? Yeah,
500 billion,
that was allocated
over 4 years.
That you're playing in a different ballpark now. So back to your sports background as well, there, Kurt. So there's so many things that we could just talk on and on about, but I think it really is a super pivotal time, just given all of the ways that these inflections are hitting each other from different angles. So.
Yeah, it's a lot. And one final thought on this is just, I think it'll be a while, even as the technology catches up, like to enable this, even at all, we're in the MVP or infancy stages of user experience for AI. So far, because we've cracked natural language processing, we've said everything is a conversation, right? And so, I think we'll start to see a fundamental shift there because right now I still feel that you have to have a certain level of like understanding and expertise beyond what you would expect from an everyday user to really truly maximize your use of AI. Like if you look at a Chat GPT or Anthropic, right? Like these models, like Claude, right, Sonnet, and all of them. It doesn't matter. They all, it's law of averages, right? So if I just hit it with a question, I'm going to get like a pretty average response. Like unless I start to learn how to fine tune how I interact with this model, i.e., prompt engineering, my results will vary. And so I think that we have a lot of work to do in that space as well, which is like thinking differently about how we do it. But again, look at 2D interfaces. Like we spent decades just cracking that. People said computers would never be for end users, right? Like it was just for businesses. That's all it would sit in. Even when they got smaller, it's still the interface. Nobody's going to want this. It's just going to take time. Yeah.
Kurt, like Brian said, there's like so many really good nuggets there that you've touched on. But the one that I want to just draw out a little bit is what you mentioned about data, because I think we've mentioned data a few times so far in this podcast. Data is now becoming one of the most important things in the AI race, and the reason for that is that there's this law of diminishing returns. You can even before DeepSeek came along, we were seeing these bigger and bigger data centers not quite giving the same jump that we had from GPT-3 to GPT-4, for example. Just wasn't there. So then the focus goes on things like reasoning, but data. And there's companies like Scale AI out there that have just got huge because they are providing curated data for AI models. But again, going back to that podcast I listened to with Benioff, he was talking about the huge projects within the whole Salesforce business around getting the data in shape to be able to build out AgentForce, for example, to make sure that you don't have these scary things that Microsoft did, where I think the AI was reading the CEO's emails and giving you, you were able to question the things. So, can you talk a little bit about what's going on the data side within the Salesforce business?
So absolutely. Yeah. So like the way the data works, like your data is your data, first of all. So I just want to make like that clear. Like nothing is trained within Salesforce on anyone's data. Second of all data is isolated between you and your company and the deployment of like your models, right? So like that is all again specific to you. and what you want to set up. Really where the AI comes into place on the Salesforce side is Atlas Reasoning Engine, which is like deciding the actions, right? Like that should be taken by a given agent. And then there's an entire trust and privacy layer that when data is pulled from any source, whether that's coming in third party, that's coming out of your CRM or even Slack, that it's going through first like the permissions and authentication layer, right? Like, like if I say, actually, this is a great example, right? Like I could query and get responses around the CEO's emails. That's likely a breakdown in the permissions chain, right? And like something being transferred there and gave that agent access to something outside of the person who actually did the asking, right? So it should essentially adopt my permissions and access levels whenever it makes a request. And so I think that that is number one. And we made sure that that works seamlessly, right? So you only ever see or can get access to or make changes to things that you have within any system that that agent is operating on. Whether that is CRM, Slack, third-party integrations you've got connected like GitHub or databases, anything, it respects that. And Salesforce has a huge platform on credentials and permissions that allows this to be set up, right? And so there is work there for sure. You know, you want to make sure that you, as you build agents or custom actions for agents, are taking these things into account, but they're always there protecting at the end of the day, making sure that agents can only access what they've been given access to. And I think it starts to get, you know, like I said, like a fuzzy line between like who's responsible for what permissions. If you're building third-party integrations into Salesforce, but within Salesforce, like it is locked down. Like you will never get the data you're not supposed to, you know, and it does a great job, right? Like anonymizing key data points and stuff like that before being sent anywhere, and then refilling them back in on the other side as well. So it's a pretty extensive system. All this stuff is available on Salesforce as well. You can like go through really deep technical analysis and like diagrams and everything on like how Atlas Reasoning Engine and the trust layer all work.
I'm sure like a lot of our audience would be quite interested in that. We try not to go too deep on the pod here itself, but who doesn't love reading a ton of documentation that is, or you could throw it at a new Chinese AI app and see how it handles it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back.
Yeah.
No, but I mean that's amazing stuff, Kurt. But another thing that I wanted to mention to you as well was just in terms of just going back to your AI for the masses type of thing as well. I think there's another sort of angle that we haven't touched on there, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's just AI for the masses, right? But I think neurodivergence is a thing that is becoming more. And well, it's always been there, but it's only now starting to be recognised.
Right.
And now that it's starting to be recognized in specific industries, I think this is a really interesting conversation that we're having now, right, around AI and like neurodiversity. You might want to peg it down to ADHD if you want to. But you could say a couple of things about that, right? First of all, how much AI could benefit those people in terms of the way that they can handle their behavioral facets. And also from the other side, from the diagnostic element, my wife works in the arena of counselling, and she's doing a thesis at the moment around how AI can help in that area. And I saw another couple of comments in the chat about how we have to be super careful about how we democratize AI in the right way, because asking it to give me a roadmap of how to do something is very difficult, very different from saying, can you fix my mental health, right? So there's just a few can of worms for you to open up and talk about in the way that you want to. But overall, what do you think? Like neurodiversity and AI and data, where's that heading right now?
Yeah. So, well, I think interestingly enough, when we throw data into the mix, I think for me, like I'm a super curious person. Like I said, I've been redefining our developer funnel at Slack, right? And so I've been just very deep in our analytics. Now, I am not a data scientist. I do have a ton of experience with SQL, but again, I'm not like a data engineer. I'm not familiar with all the tables that we have available to us. And so, for me, I look at a tool like AI as a way for me to be more curious, lacking the knowledge of how to figure that stuff out on my own. And so like I built essentially my own agent to help me define that developer funnel that understood data science, understood how to write really good SQL, and again, keeping human in the loop. So as I'm defining what we want and I'm building these queries, I'm dropping them over in our data science office hours channels and saying, hey, I want to accomplish X. Here's where I'm at with my query. How does this look? And I'm getting my feedback, right? Both from AI and from humans. And that allowed me to build out the entire funnel by myself, right? Without having to include anyone. And I mean, not include, right? I got help from others, but I mean like as a core responsibility of their job, like to take on the work of like building this out. And so I think, it will enable people, and this happens a lot and for folks who are neurodivergent, who have an idea that you focus on and you want to bring to life and might be valuable, but you lack like the resources or things available to
and
you.
And just to interject there very quickly,
Yeah.
I'm really sorry to break you up, but
No, do it.
I think one of the things that, because I'm kind of on that side of things as well, right, in terms of neurodivergence, and when you find it difficult to sit down and write a paper for 6 hours, but you have all the ideas in your head about how to do the thing that you want to do, that's where this process really kicks in, right?
I was just about to get to that as well.
I cannot sit there and write for 6 hours or even type for 6 hours to build a report. That's not because I don't have the skills to do it. And this is the differential, right? If you've got the skills to do something, but you can't translate it into the physical output, that's where AI is there to help, right?
Exactly.
And I can understand where the dilemma is, because if some people use AI to say, I am a copywriter, write me my copy for the next 10 weeks, that's a bit different from saying,
way different.
I have these 12 ideas trapped in my head and I can talk about them for an hour. Can you help me untangle them so that I can present them to other people? And then we can start a feedback loop, right? So when we're using our hands as we're doing this, but it's a real thing, right?
It is a real thing. And I think that's the difference. I think people get tripped up in that, like, in my personal opinion, like, don't rely on AI to generate like the artifact you want to use. Like, rely on AI to guide you to creating that artifact that you want to use. Sometimes it might even just be as simple as, I will tell it to write me a doc on something so that I can go, oh, this is awful. And then I go in and fix it, right? Because like starting from a blank page versus having something there that I know I can just go in and make correct where it's not, is a lot different, both in time and like level of energy invested on my behalf. And that was kind of lead into the next thing for me, especially with ADHD. Like, if a task is not stimulating, I do not want to do it, and like will mentally subconsciously do avoidance like behaviors to put it off. And that's really bad, and some of these things, like, I'll do that for, and it's like, it could be as simple as like rescheduling my doctor's appointment, right? But it's just something that is so mundane. I'm like, I would much rather be diving into Slack analytics to figure out how many new developers to platform we get each month and per year, and et cetera, and then segment that down on X, Y, and Z, right? Like that sounds so much more useful value of my time. So having, like, if we go back to democratizing AI, what if we had AI agents, right, that could just help me with that on my phone, just make the call for me? And we're kind of seeing this, right, with like Google and Siri, like they're starting to get there. But again, I don't really feel like that is at the level at which we could be operating this day and age. And so I just think, like, what if you had agents that did that, like just reduced all the toil for you, like got all that stuff out of the way? And for folks who are neurodivergent and anxious about these tasks, but maybe it doesn't just do it for you, getting into the therapeutic side, maybe it also does it for you, but offers behavioral suggestions to help you do it yourself next time. Hey, made that call for you. Here's a couple tips if you want to try this on your own next time.
That's super important. And that's why LLMs, in my opinion, should always, when they give you an output, return a question to say, are you sure about this? What do you want to do next? Here's 3 suggestions.
Absolutely.
Which one would you like to do next? Rather than just spit out the output at you. Because if that happens, your brain gets trained just to ask the question, get the answer, and then just wait until the next time you need to ask a question and get the answer. Whereas it should be a feedback loop and a conversation.
I tell people all the time, treat models, treat your conversations with AI like a conversation with a person. In that, like, you rarely take anything someone says just 100% as like, face value or completely useful to you, right? And like absorb it and use it, right? Like, I wouldn't ask someone to like, like write a rough blog post to help me and then just like publish that. You know what I mean? And so I think that we get trapped in that, like, because AI is very, what I like to say, confidently wrong pretty often. And so, when it's confident about being wrong, if you don't have enough knowledge about the topic to understand that, right, the expertise to know if it was correct or not, that's the area where people get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're about to see now is the rise of the neurodivergence, which I think could be a good thing for the world.
Look, I've been wanting to write a fantasy book for as long as I can remember, and now that I've had the ability to have AI help me through it, I am still authoring this book, right? Like, it's my book, my story. I'm working on the pacing, the characters' journeys and growth, all that, but it is helping me. I've been able to get further than I've been able to get in like 2 months than in the past 2.5 years with it. So yeah, I think it's going to have an impact on people.
Yeah, that is absolutely inspiring. One of the, I hope nobody sees my my chat history with my my AI.
Right.
My preference is Claude, but I ask Claude all
Amazing.
the dumb questions that I'm too scared to ask anybody else, because it's going to be, wait a minute, George, you should know that. You're a freaking consultant in the industry. Why are you asking that question? So it's
absolutely.
It's fantastic for that, and I really think that it's the neurodivergent community is going to be one of the communities that benefit from this first, because it's there and it's already got a place in their pockets right now. Whereas for most people, it's just a chat bot. It's maybe a cool little experiment or a cool party trick. I think for neurodivergence, it's like it becomes essential.
I agree. It's become ingrained in my life in a couple of ways.
Yeah, and it's there to help fill all of these kind of weak spots that you have.
That's it.
I thought your example,
not your specific weak spots, Kurt. Just to be fair,
that's not what George meant. Plenty of them. And I use AI and agents to help fill those gaps. I have a dietitian and chef agent because, like, I've got a picky kid. There's 4 of us. I never have time. So I put in a bunch of criteria. No meals take more than 30 minutes. Preferably these types are the things we like. Like, give me a weekly menu. And then it'll give me options, and it'll be like, oh, you can have pasta on Tuesday and you can make it this style for your daughter because she's a picky eater. And like, I don't have the time to sit down every week and figure that out. Now I've got a grocery list, I've got recipes, and I've got it all figured out for me. And soon, hopefully, those groceries, I can have an agentic experience where it just orders them for me, and then they're delivered to my house. And I've not had to do anything except work with AI to decide, yes, this is the final, we've got this right, here's what I want. Go off and take action, please.
I think that's a really exciting experience to end up on, is that if you can say, say for example, you've got a food intolerance issue, and you can just say, I have these food intolerances, I need you to go to the shopping list from this supermarket and pick me out 6 meals, 10 days worth of snacks, and make sure the fridge is stocked. That is very exciting to think that is something that is really not that far away, especially, and that's a full circle to why all of this agentic AI and doing it at cost with democratization is important.
That's
right?
Because it's so important.
Ultimately, you want to be able to, and I won't say her name, but you want to be able to tell your whoever is on your desk, just I am this, I need this, you need to check these things and bring me the results. I expect it tomorrow afternoon, and this is where we're trying to be in this industry right now. So
and again, I think we're getting there in enterprise, which makes sense. Most things, right? Like, start out in that kind of use case. Literally what we're describing is kind of what AgentForce is, right? It's like building, hey, shameless plug, but it's like building these bespoke agents that can handle these very specific skill sets and tasks for you, and then letting them go. But you keep a human in the loop, and it's got the trust layer, and Atlas reason listening engine all behind it to like ensure that it's doing things in a way that like will bring you positive results as opposed to making work harder for you, right? So yeah.
Oh, look, incredible stuff, George. Right? I think we're coming up pretty close to. I can't believe we've sort of hit 50 minutes already. But
I know
That went fast.
it's flown by.
anything to
We
close
should
this out
definitely
with,
have a
George?
follow-up.
Yeah.
Because wow, still so many questions. But I think if I can just end on a quick one, then Kurt, just as advice for people coming into the industry now. So I've got a son who's 22, who's going to be looking for a job soon. I've got another one who's doing computer science at university. He's got a couple of years to go. And then I've got loads of cousins and other relatives, and even at work, I'm talking to other parents my age who are all kind of anxious about how do we get our kids into help them get these first steps into industry. And I should also say that I'm part of a neurodivergent group at work, and I know a lot of them will be tuning in to the recording of this to listen into some of your advice. So it's just a little bit with a bit of angle on neurodivergence, because I've got a few of them in my family. Can you kind of just talk for just a minute, because we don't have a lot of time,
For sure.
on how you would motivate them and the sort of advice you would give them to inspire them?
Yeah. So the thing, and because putting like that neurodivergent lens, the tech industry is vast, and so you can very quickly get swallowed up in like going down a million different paths and becoming overwhelmed by what's out there, right? Like for me, it could be hard to stay on track, to stay focused. So something that can help me do that is I prefer to do project-based learning because then that gives me something really grounded that I'm always coming back to. And then that helps me stay more focused on like completing a task, right? So if I have a project, let's say that is, I want to build my own personal website. Well, now I have to like know HTML and I have to start like understanding the different spots, but I don't have to learn all of HTML before I can start working on my website, right? I just need to know how to like have a page show up and then work through that. So it's progressive in that it allows you to have that learning path and stick to it because you stay focused on an end goal. And you can always add features to a project, right? And then the best thing is you pick a project related to something that you're interested in. Like I love photography, motorcycles, like gaming. So I could think of a million projects that I could build that would like benefit me or my friends or someone around that field. And so this is going to do a couple things. Like I said, it'll keep you grounded. And so that will be helpful to not deviate from the path. The second is when you're breaking into the industry, you don't have credibility in your resume yet, right? Like you haven't built one up. If you're transferring from another industry, you do have transferable skills, but for the tech industry, you don't have credibility in a resume. But if you build a bunch of projects, you can build credibility in a portfolio. They can see the work that you've done. They've seen you take projects from an idea to completion, which is honestly a lot more impressive in a lot of ways than like, seeing that listed on a resume. You'd be amazed at how impactful it can be for someone to be able to interact with or visualize the actual thing that you've created as opposed to reading on it on a piece of paper. So I think that those are things that can be pretty impactful. I will still say that I think front end development, if you're just like learning on your own, is probably still the most like friendly path into development, but there's nothing wrong with starting out in more back end driven technologies. You'll never go wrong with either JavaScript or Python. JavaScript runs literally everywhere, and Python is heavily embedded in the AI space, and we're just at the cusp of that. So I think if you're in one of those two languages, and you can also do a ton of stuff with Python as well, it actually runs pretty much everywhere too. So I think that would be it. Try to stick with either front end or JavaScript and Python. Go project based. Learn your fundamentals, but then maybe try to figure out how to mix a little AI in there. And it might be a lot of tools. Maybe you build like a photo, website, and maybe you can try to have like AI categorize it for you, or do something else, or provide the alt text for your images or something like that, right? And so, it doesn't have to be big. You don't have to understand all of AI to benefit from using like little libraries or tools that are available today. And yeah, I hope that was fast enough.
Awesome. I love that advice. Thanks, Kurt.
You're quite welcome.
That's amazing. We don't all need to be like Zach Wilson and have auto marking homework, right? So yeah, that was an amazing recommendation. Thank you so much, Kurt. And it's been just so cool to have you on. The hour has just flown by, and just thank you for making the time, mate. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. I enjoyed chatting with you all so much. Thanks for having me on. I'd be glad to come back anytime. Yeah.
All right, superb. So that was Kurt. Just a quick wrap up from us at our end. Just a few things. If you enjoyed the conversation, please do let us know that you enjoyed the conversation. We really appreciate it as normal. And our next episode, we are still running every 2 weeks. Let me just see if I can just share. Let me just see if I can share a second. I might not be able to do this, but our next guest, I am just trying to bring up here. So let's just see if we can do this one. And Kurt, you'll know this guy, right? So our next guest is going to be, which I think we spotted you on there as well. So I have Taylor in a couple of weeks as well. Hopefully this is coming up on my screen. It's looking, but we'll get there in the end. There we go. So Taylor has decided to take his picture off his profile, which is makes things that like very interesting. But we're really, really excited to have him, to be totally honest. Community management ties in very nicely with your topics of DevRel as well. So we're really excited to see how you how you start to think about building a data community that really cares about what you're doing in your business. So thank you so much to Taylor for agreeing to join us for the next episode as well.
If you're looking for recommendations, Ken also works it. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was going to say real quick, if you're looking for recommendations, Ken Collins, who is VP of Product at Torque, is also a great person to have on, very data-driven in their work. And so could be, interesting person to reach out to. Good friend of mine as well. If you see this, hey, Ken.
Very nice. We love a recommendation, and we'll be tapping you up for those anyway, Kurt. So you've done part of your job to on the call, which is amazing. So that's it for us, really, guys. Thank you very, very much, George. Final closing comments from you.
Kurt, always inspiring. I was going to say expiring. Always inspiring to hear you talking. And there's a lot of good nuggets in this conversation today. And I think we're going to get a lot of listens on the back of it. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your insights.
Yeah, you're welcome. Like I said, pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, everyone. This was episode 5 of season 3 of the Data Mix. We will see you for episode 6 in 2 weeks' time. See you then. All the best.